In high school, I got into a relationship with the best performing girl in our class. Because of this, I became the target of much resentment from many classmates and all of our subject teachers. They all claimed I was holding her back. The homeroom teacher frequently called me out for talk, even taking me out for late night nap, all to share his life advice. His conclusion was simple: if you love her, you should want what's best for her. At your age, breaking up is what's best for her. I could sense the sincerity in his word. After that, I went back and suggested breaking up. She didn't agree. The following week, the homeroom teacher rearranged the seating. I was placed in the last row, while she sat in the front row. Even worse, her new deskmate was my well-known rival. He was academically excellent, second only to her in the class. They seemed like a much better match. Predictably, he openly pursued her, and their relationship was silently supported by our classmates and even encouraged by the teacher. The homeroom teacher seemed to be pushing them together deliberately. Every subject teacher arranged for them to do activities together, whether it was making posters or attending meeting. Even at the New Year's party, the music teacher gave them a special opportunity to perform a duet, singing Lee Hum Wang's Love Is in My Heart as the finale. They spent many hours rehearsing alone, both at noon and in the evenings. After New Year's, they became the school's it couple, recognized by everyone. My girlfriend, whether intentionally or not, seemed oblivious to all these changes. Meanwhile, I lived like a shell of my former self, feeling like a clown in the spotlight, humiliated every time I stepped into the classroom. The most ironic part was that my rival and I shared the same birthday, though I wasn't aware of it. On my birthday, after a night study session, the class monitor asked everyone to stay behind. Suddenly, someone turned off the light, and the entire class started singing the birthday song in unison. In that moment, I was overwhelmed with emotion, tears streaming down my face, my cheeks burning as a wave of warmth washed over me. But when the lights came back on, I realized the song wasn't for me. The stares weren't for me. The warmth I felt turned into cold, awkward silence as the tears froze on my face. After silently leaving the room, the laughter and joy from inside echoed far behind me. From that day on, I sank into a deep sense of inferiority. I withdrew from others, became quiet, hated school, and feared crowds. I started skipping classes, wandering around aimlessly, disappearing for days, and giving up on myself. My girlfriend tried to reach out to me many times, constantly calling and sending me long messages. She said she could sense something was wrong with me but couldn't understand why I'd changed so drastically. How could she not know? A massive sense of loneliness washed over me, making me feel like the entire world had nothing to do with me anymore. A week later, my mother finally found me. When I saw her, I felt a pang of guilt. She looked exhausted, her hair messy and oily, dark circles under her eyes, and her voice hoarse. My homeroom teacher, as if grasping a golden opportunity, declared that I had been absent for too long and should be expelled. My mother was shocked by the word expelled, then naturally took the phone away, smiling as he said, "You never used to watch these kinds of emotional videos." Expulsion meant being cut off from education entirely, ignoring the people around. She dropped to her knees and begged my teacher to reconsider. At that moment, I saw my always strong and smart mother humbling herself before someone else, revealing her vulnerability. I realized she wasn't any less strong or intelligent, it was just that her weakness had been exposed, and that weakness was me. People stood around watching, pointing fingers, and gossiping about me. They said I deserved it, that I was ungrateful, but seeing no change in my teacher's stance, my mother ran to her car, grabbed several live chickens, and pushed them into his hand. "These are free-range chickens from our farm. They taste great. Please try them. Just take back the expulsion. Let him keep his student status. He can even sit outside the classroom. I promise he'll be happy." And maybe the rope was tied tightly enough because the chickens suddenly broke free, flying and running all over the place. More teachers and students gathered to watch the spectacle. They all stared coldly, looking down on me, supporting the real couple they had in their hearts. Finally, my homeroom teacher, probably afraid the situation was getting out of hand. Reluctantly agreed to my mother's request. I returned to that classroom, very place that had caused me so much pain. The place I had tried countless times to escape, but I had to go back. For my mother's sake. Even if I died, I would die in that classroom. In a fit of emotion, I rushed to the podium, looking out at everyone, then bowed deeply to the teacher with tears streaming down my face. I'm sorry, teacher, for all the trouble I caused. It's all my fault. I'm so sorry. I kept nodding and bowing, tears splashing onto the floor with every word. I knew these tears were not just of remorse, they were also tears of humiliation and deep-seated inferiority. My girlfriend still refused to break up with me, but she no longer interacted with me much in front of others. She kept me tied to her but distanced herself at the same time, though I was allowed to return to class every day during lesson, morning and evening self, and night study. I could only watch as she and her desk mate worked together, helping each other, laughing and talking. The morning and evening self-study sessions were particularly torturous. I watched them recite to each other. You recite to me, I'll recite to you, and afterward, see you cheer each other on loudly. Wow, you memorized that so quickly. During night study, and none of the supervising teachers ever stopped them. On the contrary, they praised them for creating such a positive learning environment in the class. They grew closer and more in sync, becoming increasingly dependent on each other, while teachers and classmates gradually accepted the harmony between them. It was as if whether young love was good or bad depended on the people involved. I silently endured it all, quietly memorizing vocabulary, economic, politics, and history. My girlfriend would still accompany me on walks over the weekend, talking to me a lot, and sometimes she'd even bring a book and suggest we recite to each other. But every time we started, she would mention him. Every conversation, every moment, somehow brought him up. She couldn't go 3 sentences without mentioning him, couldn't take 3 steps without talking about him. Maybe she never realized how sensitive and shattered I had become inside. And how, with every word about him, she was rubbing salt into my wounds. But I never said anything, never showed it. I stayed calm, pretending nothing was wrong. The more excitedly she talked about him, the more indifferent I acted. Sometimes, I'd respond with comments like, "That's great for you too," or "I'm so jealous. You're both so amazing," or just make sure not to let it affect your studies. Then naturally took the phone away, smiling as he said, "You never used to walk these kinds of emotional games." This ambiguous relationship between us went on for quite some time. Just when I had nearly adjusted to this strange dynamic, she suddenly sent me a message late one night. How did we end up like this? I pondered over it. Oh, did we end up like this? Then she followed with, "Many years from now, we'll look back on this with regret." The word regret pierced my heart. It was like we both silently knew how our story would end, yet neither of us took any steps to stop it. It naturally took the soul away. In the end, something we create ourselves. Thinking of this, I replied, "How about we go out during the Dragon Boat Festival?" Then I closed my eyes and replayed our memories. In the second semester of our first year, we became classmates because we both chose humanity. Class 5 of the humanities track had just formed, and in the first round of exam, she immediately stood out, scoring the highest and drawing the attention of all the teachers. English teacher even thought she resembled her own daughter. Over time, the teacher began projecting her feelings for her daughter onto her. English teacher had been divorced for years, and her only daughter had moved to the UK with her ex-husband. They hadn't seen each other in years. One, while analyzing an essay in class, the teacher got emotional and started talking about her daughter. That's when I first realized how lonely she must have been. Carlin was an extremely quiet girl. She spoke softly, and even her smile was delicate and reserved. What was most interesting was that whenever someone looked at her intently, like a ripe apple, it was because she was shy. It was just how she naturally reacted. I often teased her, trying to make her blush on command. Coincidentally, all of these characteristics reminded the English teacher of her daughter. So Carlin was always the teacher's favorite. At first, We didn't interact much. Even after more than half a semester as classmates, we had barely exchanged a few words. We had only added each other on QQ through the class group. It is occasionally liking each other's posts on our moment. One, I saw a video of her skating on her page and left a casual comment, "I want to learn." Little did I know, those 4 words would entangle our lives in a way either of us could have predicted. She asked if I wanted to go skating with her. Filled with curiosity and excitement, I agreed. I thought it would be easy, but I had greatly overestimated myself. My stubbornness made me fall over 100 times that day. During a break, I watched her skate effortlessly, dressed in a white dress, gliding across the rink with grace. Her long hair flowing behind her, like a celestial maiden dancing on cloud. Suddenly, a line from an ancient poem came to mind, still like a flower reflected in water, moving like a willow swaying in the wind. It was as if the poet had written those words just for her. At the moment, she skated over to me, offering her hand, suggesting we skate together. I hesitated, shaking my head. Don't be scared. He'll protect you. Who would have thought? This quiet girl had such a playful soul. Unable to resist, I took her hand and stood up. Maybe it was just my wishful thinking, but it was the first time I had ever held a girl's hand. I skated cautiously, afraid that if I fell, I would pull her down with me. But of course, what you fear always comes true. Someone skating backwards sped toward us, and in my panic, I lost control of my feet, my skates colliding with hers. In a dramatic, almost unbelievable moment, she fell right into my arm. I'm not sure if this is how the people usually fall when skating, but at that moment, my heart now burned with intensity. I could see her face up close, smell the fragrance of her hair, and even the air she exhaled seemed to have a unique scent. The heart of a young boy. Her expression subtly changed, but she didn't seem to mind the fall. After we finished skating, it was time for dinner, and I casually asked if she wanted to grab something to eat. To my surprise, she readily agreed. It was our first meal together. We didn't talk much, but the silence between us felt comfortable, natural, without a trace of awkwardness. She didn't like egg yolks and asked if I wanted her. I nodded, saying sure. She then used her fork to offer it to me, holding it right up to my mouth. I couldn't help but smile. "Are you feeding me?" She laughed, her smile as radiant as a blooming flower. "That's what you think? Then sure." At that moment, I was completely captivated by her. After dinner, I suggested we take a walk in the park to help with digestion, and she agreed without hesitation. The night park was serene, with a gentle breeze blowing. Under the dim yellow street light, our long shadows stretched behind us, and without realizing it, we naturally held hands. The park was big, so we walked in circles, as if greedily trying to seize every moment fate had given us. I desperately wanted to confess my feelings to her, but felt it was too soon and too abrupt. I spent the entire night wrestling with the thought, unable to sleep. When we returned to school, we went back to acting as if we had nothing to do with each other. None of our classmates noticed, and no one would have guessed that two people who rarely interacted had shared such a brief but precious memory. 2 weeks later, I could no longer hold back. After much deliberation, I sent her a message. "It's you who made me believe that love doesn't need time to build. It's simply the reunion of two souls that have met countless times before their first encounter." I waited for what felt like an eternity, and finally, my phone buzzed. She replied, "In the vast flood of time, our brief lives may pass in an instant, but even so, may become long and lovely because of you." And just like that, quietly and naturally, as if it were meant to be, we spent our weekends watching movies, voting, visiting bookstores to sip tea and read, listening to the wind by the pier, hiking in the mountains, standing on rooftops chasing clouds, and playing by the quiet riverside. The happiness of a first love filled our simple life. Word of our relationship spread. I was filled with joy, expecting congratulations. But instead, I was met with malicious gossip from many classmates. It started after a PE class. When we went to the cafeteria for lunch, I whispered to her, "Babe, something happened during the game." She looked puzzled. "What happened?" Scratching my head, I blurted out. I ripped my pants. She was stunned for a moment and then burst out laughing. I tried to calm her down. Let's just eat. I don't want you to go hungry. I'll sit in a corner. And today you can get the food for us. As always. She happily agreed. But this small, insignificant incident quickly spread throughout the class. Everyone knew. People said things like, "He's not much of a man. Letting a girl stand in line for food while he just sits and waits." Others added, "Did you? That guy in our class is awful. Always making Carlin do his homework and clean his lunchbox." And even worse rumors followed, He's from a single-parent family. And they say he's got a nasty temper. I heard his father was a good person either abandoned them long ago to start a new family. Rumor has it that back in middle school, he tried to do that with a girl, and when she refused, he hit, which is why he transferred here. The rumors were wild and varied, and before long, I became a target of public scorn. I still remember one time, walking with Carlin on the school path when a few classmates passed us. They didn't hide their contempt, sneering, "Carlin, you're like a swan. Why did you end up with a toad like him?" Even now, years later, his words still sting and fill me with sadness. The teachers heard the rumors too, and their attitudes toward me grew distant. My pride wouldn't allow me to explain myself, so I began to distance myself from everyone, like smoke dispersing into the clouds. It was during this time that my rival made his move. He began openly bringing Carlin breakfast and walking her back to the dorm. Bold and confident, Carlin, not one to refuse others' kindness. Let him. His actions escalated, and supported by both teachers and classmates, he gradually became a fixture by her side. Thinking of all this, and the current state of things, I felt tears welling up. The Dragon Boat Festival came quickly. We had planned to watch the dragon boat races by the river and meet at the pavilion by the bridge. She arrived early, and at first, I didn't understand why she had left so early. When I arrived, I realized she had been intercepted by my rival. He had overheard about our date, and offered to come along, then naturally took the phone away, smiling as he said, "You never used to watch these kind of emotional videos. You guys enjoy yourself. You'll help take pictures." Carlin, unable to say no, agreed. Not only that, she also accepted his offer to have breakfast with him before our date. When I arrived, they were chatting and laughing, full of excitement. It felt like I was the third wheel. To make matters worse, I ended up being the one taking photos of them that day. That Dragon Boat Festival was a day of humiliation for me. By the summer break, Carlin had taken a part-time job at a bubble tea shop. I hadn't anticipated that the shop was owned by the English teacher's brother, and it was the teacher who had recommended both Carlin and my rival for the job. I tried applying as well, but despite all my efforts and memorized line, I called and convinced the manager to hire me. Frustrated and exhausted, I gave up and took a volunteer position at the nursing home next door. The volunteer work wasn't much, as the staff saw I was still a student and didn't assign me any heavy task. My job was mostly to chat with the elderly, play chess with them, cheer them up, and listen to their stories. This experience deeply impacted me, hearing their real-life stories, full of hardship and difficult choices, gave me a profound understanding of how tough life can be. It also instilled in me a resilience against fate and sparked my pursuit of kindness and humanity. I believe that later in life, my ability to easily feel happiness stemmed from this experience. Whenever I had free time, I would visit the bubble tea shop to see them and help with cleaning. If I'm being honest, I envied them spending all day together, sharing every little thing. The summer passed quickly, and we entered the intense period of our final year. The homeroom teacher and subject teachers grew restless, sensing the critical moment approaching and preparing for the challenges ahead. The first to intervene was the English teacher. She approached my girlfriend and said, "Are you still together? I won't interfere with your relationship, neither for nor against it, but let me be honest with you. I genuinely believe you deserve better. And I really think you could choose someone better. You know how much I've cared for you these past 2 years. Always making you the class representative and treating you with extra kindness. I'm telling you again, focus on your study. Focus on the college entrance. These were her exact words. As my girlfriend later recounted to me, and I remember each word vividly. What happened next was even more absurd. Our homeroom teacher, in an effort to further separate us, arranged for her to switch to a day school schedule. She ended up staying at the English teacher's house near the school, with the teacher personally driving her to and from school each day. This was a privilege envied by all our classmates, who saw her as practically a deity, receiving such extreme protection from the teachers. By the second semester, the history teacher decided to get involved. I had always done well in history, and this teacher had been the most patient with me. He called me in for a talk, speaking at length, though never once meeting my gaze. "You know, you're a smart kid. I noticed that from the first year I taught your class. No wonder Carlin is so infatuated with you. I want to talk to you about matters of the heart. You've been with Carlin for about 2 years now, so you must have some understanding of love by now. What do you think love is?" I was taken aback and didn't answer. He continued, "Let me tell you a story. 20 years ago, there was a young man like you, deeply in love with his girlfriend. Every morning, he would walk several blocks to buy her hot soy milk. He even fought with other boys for her, work part-time jobs during the holidays to save money for gifts, and in college, he would travel hundreds of miles just to see a movie with her. Was long journey, so lonely yet so full of joy. God knows how bittersweet that road was. I remember one time, I was out for a late night snack with friends and had the best taro dessert. I wanted her to taste it before she went to bed, so I drove too fast. And while turning a corner, my car flipped into a ditch. I was furious, so angry that I cried, because the dessert had spilled. The history teacher's eyes glistened slightly, lost in the happy memory. Another time, I bought her a beautiful bouquet. I was so eager to see her reaction that I sped through the streets again. At a sharp turn, bouquet on the passenger seat tipped over. In my panic, I reached out to grab it, cutting my hand on the thorn. There were deep red scratches. Once again, I was angry, so angry that I cried, because the flowers were ruined. He paused, seemingly overwhelmed with emotion. What I'm trying to say is that every time I went to see her, I gave it my all. I couldn't wait, rushing to her as fast as I could. At the time, I truly believed she was the one. I gave her all my passion, cut off all distraction, and left no escape route for myself. I only ran toward her. Later, we graduated from university and attended each other's graduation ceremony. Everyone thought we would soon get married. But the year after we graduated, she got into graduate school, and without hesitation, she ended our 7-year relationship. I was heartbroken. I waited outside her dormitory for over a month, only to find out later that she'd been staying at a friend's house to avoid me. That month was probably the most painful of my life. I held on to hope, even though there was none. In the end, I was disappointed and utterly devastated. The teacher pushed his glasses up, wiping the corner of his eye with his finger. In the end, she sent me just 6 words or last communication ever: "Forgive me. I need to fly." As he said those 6 words, it was as if he were expelling a fishbone lodged in it. She left me after she got into grad school. I later went to grad school too, but it was too late to save our relationship. I became a teacher, and a father, and over time, I came to understand the true meaning of love is to let her become better, even if the cost is losing her. Protect her well-being. Ensure her well-being. When he finished, the teacher fell silent. Looking down, I understood his final word. No wonder he had asked me what love is. It turns out love is letting go. I made up my mind and solemnly told him, "Teacher, I understand now. Do not affect her studies. I will break up with her this week. Completely. Once and for all. No lingering ties." The history teacher's eyes lit up like summer fireworks. He slowly lifted his head, full of relief but also showing hesitation. After a long pause, he finally said, "You still don't understand." I was stunned, full of confusion. "Then what is it?" The teacher lowered his head again and spoke without looking at me. "Do you know about Carlin's family? She has 3 older brothers and 3 older sisters. Her father was nearly 60 when she was born. At first, they gave her away, but she later found her way back. That event caused deep emotional scars. That's why we teachers pay so much attention to her. When she returned home, she didn't receive the love and care she deserved. Her siblings felt she shouldn't have come back, and her parents often scolded her for being a burden. In such a dysfunctional family, she became very understanding, hardworking, and well-behaved. Maybe she starved for love, and yeah, you're a very loving person. We can all see that. Maybe your presence filled the void for her. She relies on you, and perhaps, in her heart, you're like family to her. Her real family didn't take care of her. After she finished middle school, they didn't want her to continue her study. She secretly worked summer jobs to save up for her high school tuition. 2 years have passed. She is very tired and scared. She needs stable security. Over the years and over these 2 years, we can see that you are truly sincere towards her. To be honest, at first, a few of us teachers had some reservations about you. But now it seems you are indeed worthy of trust. I was deeply moved and felt deeply guilty towards the teacher, unable to help but sob quietly. The teacher placed a hand on my shoulder and continued. Do you know what stable security means? I asked urgently. What is it? It's university. It's getting into university. Only by getting into university. Only with a university diploma can she have lifelong security. Just like my girlfriend. She resolutely pursued her security. I'm saying all this to tell you that we, as boys, can never hinder a girl's pursuit of her lifelong security in the name of love. This is a lifetime commitment. The teacher's tone became increasingly serious and sincere, but I felt like I couldn't breathe. As if countless hands were tightening around my throat, I cautiously asked, So what should I do? The teacher lowered his voice. We all know that Carlin can't be without you. It's always her who doesn't want to break up. We also know that you have made up your mind to break up with her this time. But what good will that do? It will only increasingly affect her studies. The only way to remedy this now is, you need to drop out. After a whole evening of tears, it turns out they were subtly persuading me to withdraw. I was heartbroken and trembling all over. Don't I need security? Don't I deserve to attend university? Shouldn't I have a future? Why be so ruthless? That was my most respected history teacher. Kind and gentle. Yet he uttered the most piercing word. Seeing me silent, he hurriedly pressed on. For the past 2 years, we've seen that you love her very much. We all support you and hope that you two can have a good future together. Consider it for your future together. You know, it's often us men who have to make sacrifices. All the teachers praised you, saying you are devoted, responsible, and brave. Now is the time to prove to them that they are not wrong. From a rational analysis of both your overall grade, who do you think has a better chance of getting into university? How are you? I remained non-committal. He continued. Everyone in the class knows Carlin has excellent grade. She will definitely be above the key undergraduate level. The school leadership thinks highly of her. If you were to make a rational choice, I believe you would also choose to let her go to university. You are extremely responsible. And we all know that. Looking long-term, once she gets into university, her family won't support her education. Her older siblings already have their own families and heavy burdens. At that point, she will meet you as her boyfriend. Love is selfless. It is about giving. It is about sacrifice. By dropping out, you won't disturb her studies. She may feel sad for a while, but with our teachers and classmates to support and guide her, we believe she can quickly refocus on her study. You sacrificing your education to work for her tuition is, frankly speaking, a great way to uphold love. You are protecting her future. You are shielding her from the storm. On a higher level, what you are doing is commendable. The teacher said many more things, but I could no longer absorb or remember them. I was trapped in a difficult decision. At the end of our conversation, I mustered the courage to weakly ask the teacher, if I drop out and go home, teacher, can I still keep my right to take the college entrance exam? The teacher was overjoyed. As if my response was exactly what he wanted to hear. He repeatedly answered. Then naturally took the phone away. Smiling as he said, "You never used to watch these kind of emotional videos. But during this time, you must not contact her. We will arrange everything else. Well, tell her you went to work to earn tuition for her university. Trust us. We will speak well of her and keep an eye on her." So the next day, I packed my things. I knew my mother would be the most hurt. But I had made up my mind and didn't intend to explain anything to her. I had no other choice. Before leaving school, I went to the office to have the head teacher sign a safety agreement for off-campus activity. As I neared the office, I heard many teachers laughing and talking, creating a joyful and celebratory atmosphere. Just as I was about to knock on the door, I heard a familiar voice. It was the politics teacher. With that rare, powerful contralto voice that no one could mistake, I heard her excitedly ask, "Are you really going back? Now we have hope for the bonus for the high school graduation rate." Then came another familiar voice, "Don't worry. He has promised me. There won't be any issues this time." It was the history teacher. I felt numb. My heart chilled to the core. Another voice chimed in. "Will he take the college entrance exam?" His tone as calm and neutral as ever. The history teacher replied, "Of course he will. Let him take it. This kid has decent grades, especially in history. So, if it weren't for Carlin, I would really hate to lose him." The politics teacher said, "Come on, with his political grades, it doesn't matter whether he takes the entrance exam or not." The history teacher countered, "Don't say that. Everyone has unlimited potential." The politics teacher replied, "I believe that everyone has unlimited potential, but the premise is that the individual must be ready." I felt a surge of anger. What have I done? Why am I not considered an individual? I was about to rush in and argue when the math teacher spoke up. He was there too. He was the director of education. Schultz, and he be in the administration. Yet he was here celebrating as well. Math teacher, well, to be honest, during the time they were dating, Carlin's math grades dropped dramatically. There were 2 mock exams where she scored just over 100. At the department meeting, I didn't even dare to bring it up. Zinnia was no different from sacrificing the car to save the captain, cutting off an arm to survive. Politics teacher sacrificed the car to save the captain, cut off an arm to survive? Let me put it this way: if that kid can get into university, you can chop off my head and use it as a stool, and then kick it like a football. After you're done. Finally, the homeroom teacher spoke up. Enough of it. He should be here to get my signature by now. Politics teacher, come on. Hurry up. The sooner, the better. Then came a long stretch of silence. To avoid the awkwardness, I waited outside for a while before knocking and entering. The teachers were all there, looking at me with reluctance. They offered me some insipid blessings and expectation, but to my ear, these words felt insincere and nauseating. I didn't stay for even a moment longer and left in a hurry. I was leaving my high school. 2.5 years of youth was now unrelated to me. After returning home, I simply told my mother, "I'm not studying anymore," then rushed to my room and cried loudly. My mother likely heard my sobs and guessed the reason. So she didn't press me for more details, but from that day on, I knew all her hopes were pinned on me. And now that I had dropped out and returned home, her heart must have been breaking. But what could I do? I could never let my mother kneel to anyone again in this life. In the time leading up to the college entrance exam, I stayed in my room almost all the time. I only came out to eat and shower, hardly leaving otherwise. My mother grew increasingly, and her gray hair multiplied rapidly. All I felt was heartache for her. My mother told me that after I dropped out, some relatives made sarcastic remarks, and I had never seemed like someone who would amount to much. She told me that it was okay not to study, but I needed to be a decent person. I always remembered this sentence. It was etched deeply in my mind. With the exam approaching, I finally stepped back onto my campus. All the painful, joyful, and conflicted memories flooded into my mind. They had been sealed for too long and now burst forth like a swarm. After the college entrance exam, I found out that my girlfriend had gotten together with her deskmate. Even stranger, the day before the exam, she discovered that her deskmate was also dating another girl at the same time. Heartbroken, I'd drowned my sorrows alone. The naturally took the thumb. I ended up missing the Chinese exam. Her desk-mate, also distracted by juggling two relationships, struggled with his study, and his grades dropped significantly. On the night before the exam, the situation came to light, leaving him unfocused during the test, and he ran out of time in many subjects. Finally, the results were released at noon. The level of excitement was akin to opening a lottery ticket. I hesitated for a long time in front of the computer, ultimately not daring to click to see my scores. Finally, beaming with joy. You made it. You made it. You passed the undergraduate line. I was shocked. Why? My mother said she saw that I was too afraid to check my score. She secretly called my homeroom teacher to ask for my examination number and help me check. She rushed over, grabbed my hand, looked into my eye, and repeated, "You passed. You really passed." My mother's voice trembled, and tears of joy streamed down her face. I slowly closed my eyes. I had finally made it. I watched as my mother remained immersed in endless joy. At that moment, it was the ultimate enjoyment of my life.